Hello and welcome to my course on Economics for Business. This is Module 3, the structure of production. So by the end of this module, I want you to have a good understanding of the stages of production and how close you are to what I call the final consumer. I also want you to be able to understand how to describe the supply web of your business. So what is the stages of production? Well, why do we produce anything? The purpose of all production is consumption. And since consumption is the sole purpose of production, then that must mean that the final consumer is the one in command of what gets produced, ultimately, by their buying decisions. And this is true even if you sell business to business. The customers of your customers are the ones calling the shots, ultimately. So think about your customers. Who are they and what do they buy from you? And also think about their customers. Who are they? What do they buy? And I want you to continue this exercise until you reach a point where there are no more customers. This is the final consumer. And if you want to, you can post that in the community forums. Think about who your customers are and who their customers' customers are. If it's commercially sensitive, you can use made-up names, or you can even make up a new business. Just go through that process of thinking about where you are in the stages of production and who your customers are, who your customers' customers are, until you reach that final consumer. So what you've done by doing this is you've described the stages of production for your business. So what does the final consumer want that might be different from what your direct customers might want or need? And how might understanding this shape your approach to your product design or your marketing? Understanding your place in the production process helps you contextualize marketing. If you explicitly think about the value that your product adds to the final consumer, then you're in a really, really enviable place in terms of being an entrepreneur. The entrepreneurs who don't do this are definitely at a disadvantage towards the entrepreneurs who do this explicitly. Always remember that your customers have customers, and the value that you add to your customers must add value to your customers' customers. So let's quickly walk through Reggie and Great Beer Guys as a case study, to get more of a grip on what I'm saying. So for Great Beer Guys, there's two stages of production. There's Great Beer Guys with their brewery, where they bring in all these ingredients and they make really great beer. There's the supermarkets, which they sell the beer to. That would be stage 1 in the stages of production. And then the supermarkets, they don't consume beer. They have final consumers, people who come in and buy beer to have a drink on a Saturday night. And that's stage 2 of the stages of production for Great Beer Guys. So they're 2 stages removed from final consumers. So how can Reggie use this to inform his marketing strategy? Well, when he's thinking about marketing to his direct consumers, which are supermarkets, he might think of things like, my packaging probably needs to be marketed as durable. Might think like, maybe I should have cases or pallets for his products, because supermarkets value those things. And then in terms of his messaging, he might really want to emphasize that he's a reliable supplier. He delivers on time. He delivers really high quality beer. He might want to think about pricing his beer in terms of giving bulk discounts, maybe to play his supermarket customers off against each other and earn more profits. And then he might want to also think about health and lifestyle things. We've said he sells to boutique supermarkets, so maybe he wants to market his beer as sustainable or locally brewed. There's some core ideas. And then when Reggie is thinking about what his ultimate final consumers want, well, they want good beer, right? So Reggie might think, my packaging, maybe I want to make it vibrant, or maybe I want to give it some other personality. In New Zealand, we actually have a brand of beer that does the opposite. Instead of having vibrant colours like everyone else, they've gone for a really, really purposeful beer bones look, and it works really well. Then in terms of product line choices, Reggie might want to offer variety packs. So that's common. It's very common in beer. You have 6 packs of different hop varieties, different beer types. It's a lot of fun as a consumer. And then for product features, particularly in beer, a product feature could be an exotic species of hops. Again, I've said that Reggie operates a brewery in Portland in the USA. Maybe his marketing could be he imports hops from New Zealand, we're an exotic country. And that could be a good feature for his consumers, if he thinks they value that. And remember, it's all about what the consumer values. So in terms of his messaging, he might want to bring in kind of brand values, like it's quality, or a personal brand, maybe, whatever he wants to do. Maybe there's some kind of price sensitivity stuff. Maybe he offers holiday deals. So for health and lifestyle stuff, Reggie might want to market his beer as being kind of quite adventurous. Maybe, again, if he uses like New Zealand or other exotic hops, he might bring in this idea that his beer is adventurous because he's using these exotic hops from some far off place. But anyway, so you can see how Reggie, in thinking through these stages of production, he's doing much more than only thinking about what the supermarket wants. He's also thinking about what the final consumer wants. And so he's adding a lot more value in that way. Next idea that's tangential to what I've just spoken about with the stages of production and kind of those marketing reasoning and marketing logic is this idea of a supply web. So I want you to quickly jot down kind of 2 of your suppliers and then think about 2 of their suppliers. What you've just drawn is going to be a supply chain. It's going to show you a linear relationship from your suppliers to your suppliers down to you. It's 1, 1, 1. Just line, straight line. That's called a supply chain. Well, then we can actually augment that. We can bring in these ideas that we went through in Module 2 of subjective value and opportunity cost. And we can do so by kind of considering that for every one of your suppliers, there's going to be alternative suppliers. And then for every one of their suppliers, there's also going to be alternative suppliers. People who they could buy from, but for whatever reason they just don't. That's kind of the opportunity costs. And also that brings in ideas of subjective value. So I want you to go through this exercise. And if you'd like to, please post this on the forums, go through it together. Again, learn from each other. The whole value of this course is that I've come up with a framework based on my experiences, and then what I've learned through my experiences has been collaborative. And so the best way I can give you that experience is by kind of creating a simulation and giving you a community that helps each other learn. So I want you to write down your suppliers and then consider what alternatives you have. You might want to lay these out in a diagram with lines connecting each supplier to you. Maybe for the suppliers that you could buy from but don't, maybe you want to colour code the lines or even make them dotted, just some way make them different. Just to say, I could buy from this supplier, but I just don't. And then kind of next, I want you to go a bit further in your supply chain, or your supply web, I should say, and consider who your suppliers buy from. And maybe try and understand or imagine what alternatives there might be. And as you get higher and higher in the stages of production, you'll begin to find that the suppliers are really, really hard to pin down. But it's a fun exercise to go through. And so I want you to repeat this process basically until you can't think of any more logical suppliers. Basically until you reach the end and you're thinking, oh, well, who supplies this person? Well, maybe they dig something out of the ground, right? And that's the earth supplies them. And that's kind of the obvious end. So we'll go through an example for Great Beer Guys. Or actually, I want you to go into the course page and just download the diagram I've drawn. So what I've done is I've colour-coded the lines. So for each supplier that Reggie could buy from but doesn't, I've coded those with a red dotted line. And for the suppliers he does buy from, that's just a black solid line. So Great Beer Guys has kind of the following imaginary suppliers. For hops, he's got Hop Tops, who he buys from, and Good Hops Limited, who he doesn't buy from. For the brewing vats, Reggie could buy from Brass Vats R Us, which he doesn't buy from, or he could buy from Big Vats Co. And for grains, he could go to Grains Co, or he could go to Australia Grains. And kind of each of these suppliers has their own suppliers, and I've drawn that out. I've kind of tried to imagine kind of as humorous names as I possibly can, and I've tried to imagine kind of some things you might not have thought of. So for the hops, for Reggie's hops suppliers, they have their own seed suppliers, and they also have their own fertilizer suppliers. But then their seed suppliers, I've gone back and said, well, actually I know that in hops production, seeds for hops are produced by research institutions or companies who breed hops and make special varieties. And so I've made a company for that and sort of traced that back as far as I could. And so really each supplier is a supplier, so I want you to understand that, and walk through the downloadable file, see if you can kind of unpick what I've tried to do, and see if you can recreate that for your business. And then I think it would be useful if you kind of post your picture maybe in the forums, and we can all discuss it and see how everybody exists within their own supply web, and then kind of maybe discuss, like, do we have similar suppliers? Am I buying from a supplier that you're not? And that might be interesting. So basically, in summary, production is always going to be directed by the final consumer and their decision to buy. Your customers have customers, and their customers have customers, and their customers have customers, all the way down to the final consumer. So always keep the final consumer in mind. Always. And what I've basically summarised what a supply web is. A supply chain shows you who you do buy from, and a supply web shows you who you could buy from, and shows you a lot more information.